Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That can only mean one thing. Live after hours with Chuck Bowser, your favorite RCDD, and you know I'm your favorite RCDD. Just go to your favorite social media post, right? TikTok, Instagram, wherever, right now, and post in there. Chuck is my favorite RCDD, and then hashtag me in it. Hashtag CBRCDD. Let's rock the internet. Let's rock the internet. Let me go and put it on the chat box so I can see people chatting with me. There we go. So I always, Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Still thinking about changing the podcast. Maybe doing live streams on Mondays and doing the actual recordings on Wednesday. Still tinkering with that idea. Haven't really made a decision on it yet. Oh, hey, what are you drinking? Tell us in the chat box. What are you drinking? It is obviously 6 o'clock here. I'm drinking honey chai turmeric tea. Honey chai turmeric. It's actually pretty good. Pretty good. It's nice and keeps you nice and warm. Tell us in the chat box what you Shotzi, are you drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper? There you go. I didn't see his post before I actually said that. So, all right, let's go ahead and do our acronym challenge. Our acronym challenge. So get your typing fingers ready. Get your typing fingers ready. What does the acronym OEM mean? What does the acronym OEM mean? So I'll wait. You gotta give us a couple seconds to do that. And that's actually an acronym that will actually work across um, multiple multiple. Kevin Brick. Why? 2-bit. Did you get my message, man? Did you get my message? Please say yes. So Kevin said original equipment manufacturer. That's exactly what it stands for. Exactly. Glad to have you. I'm glad to have you in the room, Kevin. I truly, truly am. And I want you, I want you to keep me honest. Okay, keep me honest, man. That's one thing I appreciate. I don't, it's funny. I got the, those who know me know that I teach for a living, and after every class that I teach, they automatically get this survey. How was the class? How was the curriculum? How was the instructor? And a lot of times I get, great, good, fantastic. I would rather have somebody say, "Hey, Chuck," and this happened in just this last class. Somebody he said, yeah, he made a comment in there, "Hey, Chuck, maybe a little less experience, a little more content or something." Like I don't know exactly worded it. I love those kinds of comments because it gives me something actionable to improve on. See, I'm addicted to being a constant learner, and I'm also addicted to being 10% better than I was in the last episode. That's why I appreciate Kevin in the house, because Kevin is one of those kinds of people that if you're wrong, he has no problems calling you out and telling you you're wrong. And I appreciate those because those kinds of people keep me on my toes. Keep me on my toes. So I appreciate Kevin being in the house today, right? Um, People are too soft, Chuck. No one has the balls to give you the straight goods. Amen, brother. Amen. We live in a society where you might hurt somebody's feelings. I get that. I get that 100%, 100%. So I got questions left over from last week. I'm going to go through, but I also want to um, talk about. I got a question in chit chat, TikTok right before we started, and this question comes from TJ. TJ, and he says, explain the difference between the core and the cladding. Explain the difference between the core and the cladding. So what TJ's asking about is about a fiber strand. So every fiber strand has three components: the core, the cladding, and an acrylite coating. Every fiber strand is typically 250 or 900 micron in overall size. There are a few other sizes, but the vast majority is going to be 250 or 900. 900 is typically going to be your inside plant fiber. 250 is typically going to be your outside plant fiber. Outside plant fiber, because it's 250, you do have to use a furcating harness when you put that on when it comes into the building. That makes that strand a little bit more resilient. It makes it a little bit easier to connectorize that cable. So what's the difference between the core and the cladding? So the core and the cladding, they're both made of pure silica dioxide. Pure silica dioxide. And the core is the very center of the glass. It has a high index of refraction. which means light travels through it very easily. Okay. Surrounding that, you have the cladding. The cladding is also made with pure silica dioxide, but it also has a little bit of boron mixed with it. There's also another chemical that they use sometimes as well, but I can't remember what that is off the top of my head. And what that does is it makes the glass, the index of refraction, lower. So what happens is the light doesn't go through it as easy. So it creates what's called total internal reflection. See, the core has an index of refraction. It might be, for example, 1.43, and the clouding might be 1.45. That little bit of a difference it only takes about 3 to 5% of difference between those refractions to make it work. Because as the way fiber works is it turns light on, turns light off, turns light on, turns light off. And each one of those represents a 1 or a 0. Now that light is going down the fiber and it's literally bouncing off the cladding because the cladding is acting like a mirror to keep that light on the core. And as long as you're inside what's called the critical incident angle, the light will stay on the core and not escape out of the strand and continue on down that fiber. There is a fantastic video on this. And if you I'm gonna give you the name and how to find it in just a second. Do me a favor. If you do go to that video, make sure you put in the chat box, hey, Chuck from Let's Talk Cabling sent me to watch your video. Okay. So go to Google, type in how fiber works. It's a video made by Engineer Guy. And he takes a bucket of water, he cuts a hole in one side, puts a cork in it, cuts a square hole on the other side, glues a clear piece of plastic, fills it up with water, with a little bit of creamer. And the creamer is kind of like the boron. So what it does is it makes light refract a little bit. He takes the laser pointer, shines it on one side, takes the cork out, the water streams, and you can literally watch the light bounce on the water as it streams and goes to another bucket. That's exactly how fiber optic cabling works. How fiber works, Engineer Guy, go watch that video. And then also, that guy in that video, they also talk about um, the TAT8 cable. TAT8 cable is the fiber optic cable that connects the North American continent with Europe. Really great video. Talks about reflection, refraction. It's a great video. Make sure you watch it. I showed almost every single virtual class I do now. Almost every single class that I do now. All right, let's get on with the other questions. These are leftovers from last week, and this question comes from Aaron. Hey, Shotzi, Kaylin, and TJ, make sure you answer this question too, and also you too, Kevin. I know you've got some input on this. So Aaron wants to know, what tools should every installer buy before day one? Aaron wants to know, what tools should every installer buy before day one? So put your comments in the chat box. Let's help Aaron out. My first thing is, go buy the appropriate PPE. Okay, go buy the appropriate PPE, the right boots, comfortable, good work pants, either Milwaukee or jeans or some kind of good quality pants, nice socks, stuff like that. But there are some basic hand tools that I really think you should have, right? Kevin in the chat TikTok is saying screwdrivers, scissors, dikes, which means cutters, and a torpedo level. Excellent, excellent. TJ's asking for copper or fiber. I would assume copper. He didn't specify. Most people, when they come into this industry, they come in and they usually do copper before they do fiber. Don't get me wrong, there are people who do fiber from day one, but the vast majority of us do copper for a year or two before we get in that. So yeah, screwdriver. And Kevin brings up a great point. Kevin says, doesn't your employer usually supply PPE? I'm sorry. There's employer PPE, and then there's what I would consider my own PPE. So I don't know of too many employers that would buy you work boots. So for me, that would be personal PPE. Now, a high vis vest, a hard hat, safety glasses, absolutely, that should be the main. That should be provided to you by the employer. I agree with that 100%. So I also recommend, obviously, an assortment of screwdrivers, straight and Phillips, a pair of needle nose, a pair of cutters, maybe even a pair of linesmen. Some people call them nines. I got 10,000 points for somebody who can tell me what does nines mean in the chat box. What does a nine mean? Electricians use that term all the time. Um, Maybe even a keyhole saw. A keyhole saw is cheap. Keyhole saws, I don't know, 10, 12 bucks. Um, a torpedo level, as Kevin mentioned, right? The 9-inch diagonal cutter is exactly right, Kevin. 10,000 points to Kevin. 10,000 points, my friend. Yeah, so that's good hand tools. And here's a bit of advice that I get in trouble with saying all the time. Buy the best that you can afford when it comes to those kinds of tools, right? Screwdrivers and nines and needle nose and stuff. Buy the best tools that you can afford, because I learned a long time ago, cheap tools don't usually last. Not very long. I have a pair of snips. Well, actually, my brother has. I've said it on more than one occasion. I have a pair of snips that I had when I got in this industry, and he has them now, and they are 40 years old. 40 years run. Thanks for coming by, Mr. Kevin. They're 40 years old. So buy the best tools that you can afford. Okay. Some people might even say, buy a modular plug tool, a modular plug crimper. My thoughts there are is, again, I think that should be an employer um, tool provided to you, because the modular plug tools are really going to be dependent on whose modular plugs you're using. If you start using one manufacturer's crimper with somebody else's head, you may not get a good quality, consistent crimp. So, for example, if you're doing, here's a shout out to Simply RJ45, right? So if you're using their mod ends, use one of their crimpers. Okay, use one of their crimpers. That's the best thing to do. Best thing to do. Um, I even had a guy one time in his toolkit. He had a pair of their medical tools. I can't remember what they're called. Daryl, the RCDs in the house. Forceps. He had a set of forceps in his tool bag, so he can reach in the wall and grab the cable and pull it out. I thought that was kind of eccentric, but okay. Because have you ever priced medical equipment? It's not cheap, not cheap, and you can do the same thing with a coat hanger. So the coat hanger is going to be a lot less. Daryl, the RCDs in TikTok, and he says, I have a tone test, toner, and probe that my dad gave me when I graduated from high school in 1989. Oof, Daryl, you're almost as old as me. Almost as old as me. Um, there we go. So yeah, those are the tools that I suggest that you buy. Um, and good luck. And if you have any other questions, or need any help, Aaron, because I know you listen to the show, just give us a holler. Question number 2. This comes from Heather, and Heather says, "My client wants the home run Wi-Fi to every room." Okay, I want to run Wi-Fi to every room. Is that realistic? It can be done. Absolutely, it can be done. I think it's an overkill. Well, let me ask you this: how big's the house? Right now, for example, my house is only 1,300 square feet. I think I live in a small house. One or two access points would more than cover everything in this place. Now, if it's a big, huge house, like say Potomac, Maryland, Beverly Hills, Florida, you know, where the houses are 10,000 square feet, you might need more Wi-Fi access points. I still don't think you need one for every room, though. And if you're gonna do, that kind of beats the purpose, doesn't it? If you're gonna put a wireless access point in every room, why don't you just run a cable to a faceplate and let them do a direct connection? A direct connection is not going to be susceptible to RF frequency interference. You get better bandwidth if you got direct connection as opposed to Wi-Fi. And I think I think you really should consider centralizing the access provider, because there are going to be some devices, for example, like your phone, like your tablet, your iPad, your iPod. There you go. That you're going to be connecting via Wi-Fi, not necessarily a cable, but I still don't think you need one for every room. Just put one in a subject. There's some great tools out there to make what's called heat maps, where you can actually do take measurements of you put a wireless access point somewhere, and it's just a temporary, and then you turn it on, and then you take this tool, you go around. I should do an episode on heat maps. Oh my gosh, I should do an episode on that. I'm gonna reach out. Tell me in the chat box what manufacturer do you think I should reach out to ask them if they can give me a heat map tester so I can make an episode about it? Tell me in the chat box who should I reach out to contact, or better yet, reach out to them and say, hey, Chuck wants to do a show on wireless access points and heat maps. Maybe you can loan him a tool. So there you go. All right, so question number 3, and this comes from Omar. And Omar wants to know, how do I keep certification testers calibrated for valid audits? Okay, so first off, let's talk about what does the standard say about calibration for certifiers, right? So we're talking specifically about certifiers here. You don't have to worry about qualifiers or verifiers. Qualifier is a beard error rate tester. A verifier is just a continuity tester. We're talking about a cable certifier. They're going to be expensive, $10,000 to $20,000. Number one, um, if you are the project manager or the equipment manager, you should create a spreadsheet. You should create a data, excuse me, a database of your tools, and you should have the make, the model, the serial number. That way, in case anything gets stolen, you got records. And then also put in there, when was it calibrated last, and set up a calendar event on your thing in about 10 months, 11 months to get that tool calibrated. Now, here's why I say that. The standard says that you have to calibrate your certifiers per the manufacturer's instructions. Every manufacturer that I'm aware of, Softing, AEM, Fluke, Trend, they all recommend their certifiers are calibrated once every 12 months. And most manufacturers, connectivity manufacturers, all the big ones. If you want to be warranty, most of them are going to tell you that the thing that test has been calibrated within the past 12 previous months. Now, as a technician in the field, now that was talking from a PM's point of view. From a technician in the field's point of view, almost all the testers nowadays, when you get within the 12 months of those, right, the 12 months of the calibration date, when you turn it on, a little thing pops up and it says, hey, I need to be calibrated in 30 days. If you're a technician and you see that pop up in your tester, get on the phone, call your project manager, call your equipment manufacturer and say, hey, look, I just want to give you a heads up. The certifier that you gave me, it's saying it needs to be calibrated in 30 days. That way they can start making the arrangements to get it in to have it start being calibrated. Because it's better to have it go in, and some of the manufacturers, some of the tester manufacturers have programs where they will give you a loaner tester while yours is in the shop, right? We're all familiar with the gold package, but most of the test manufacturers have some form of that kind of a program, and that's always a good thing to have. But if you have more than one tester, it's always a good idea to rotate them, so that way if one fails or one goes out of calibration, you have a backup. Always a good thing to have a backup when it comes to testers. It just is. Okay. Next question. This comes from Sasha. Should I use Velcro or tie wraps for cable dressing in a data center? Yeah, great question, Sasha. But before I answer that, I saw a post like today, maybe yesterday, maybe even the day before. I kind of lost track of it. They were asking, can they use electrical tape instead of tape or tie wraps? I mean, instead of tie wraps or Velcro. And I was like, well, technically you can, as long as you don't over cinch it. But I don't know if I would use electrical tape to bundle cables. Now, again, per the standard, you can use Velcro or tie wraps. If you use tie wraps, according to the standards, they got to be placed at irregular distances and they got to be loose so you can spin them on the bundle. Okay. Um, but your question, Sasha, is about data centers, right? So data centers generally need a lot of airflow, right? That's why they got hot aisles and cold aisles. The hot aisles where all the heat from the equipment gets put into the aisle. The HVAC unit, or not the HVAC unit, but the crack unit, the computer room air conditioning, sucks that hot air, cools it off, and then sends it underneath, and it comes back up through the floor, and that cools everything down. So it's the thing is with that's why you want to make sure when you bundle cables you don't block airflow. And I think tie wraps are great for permanent, right? Because if somebody gets into it, especially if you use like a color tie wrap, like an orange or yellow or some weird color, not black or white, that way it now becomes temper evident. So if somebody were to cut off tie wraps and then replace them with black, because you always use green or yellow or whatever color, then you know that somebody has tampered with your cable bundles. Cable bundles. So the real question is, you can use Velcro or tie wraps, but the real thing is, watch your bend radiuses. Watch your bend radius, especially when you exit out of the ladder rack, right? And also watch. A lot of techs overlook this one. They tend to do nice big bundles coming down the cable runways. Watch where those cables go across the support bars, because those cables in the bottom can get crushed. That's why the recommendation from the best practice manual says no more than 24 cables per bundle, and don't stack them more than 6 inches high. That way the chances are less that you'll crush those cables on the bottom. Okay, next question. This comes from Benji. Benji says, how do I price for unknown site conditions on a fixed bid? Oh, God. So, number one, Benji, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I did an episode on terms and conditions. I suggest you go watch that video. Last week's video, I did it on entrance facilities and the 5 different ways that we can bring signals into the entrance facility: underground, direct buried, aerial, wireless, or tunnel. Yeah, talk about all that stuff. Talk about the advantages and the disadvantages, right? Kevin, I thought you said you were leaving. All right, so moving back on. So as an estimator, I used to estimate a lot of things where I couldn't go to the job site for whatever reason. So you have to make assumptions. You have to make assumptions. For example, there's going to be clear space in the interstitial space in the ceiling to run the cables. Okay, you'll be able to get far enough away from EMI. So whatever assumptions you make, you better write them down, and you better put them in that contract as under assumptions or under terms and conditions. And that way it becomes part of the contract documents. That way, if you get out on the job site and you said, okay, well, look, we assumed we were going to use this hallway, and now we can't because the electricians are using it, and we got to go to a different hallway. Now you have a legitimate foundation for change order. Legitimate foundation, because you put it in the assumptions or the terms and conditions. Okay. All right. Next question. This comes from Gabrielle or Gabs. New tech on the team is terrified of fusion splicing. How can I get them to be confident? Oh, this is a TJ question all the way, all the way. How do you get a new technician confident while using Anthony's in the house while using a fusion splicer? So here, you need to start being careful before you start using a fusion splicer. Fiber itself can be pretty dangerous stuff. And there was another conversation thread where somebody said, "Hey, we always hear in fiber classes that if you get it in your blood vessel, it's going to go to your heart and kill you." Now, has that happened to anybody? I know somebody who had 50 plus years of experience with fiber optic cabling, and he had a fiber jab in him, got in one of his veins. He had to go to the hospital to get it removed. Okay, so the far more dangerous dealing with the fiber. Make sure you dispose of it in approved scraps containers. Okay, approved scraps containers. Do not use electrical tape rolled over backwards. Okay, do not. Okay, if you break a fiber, dispose of it right away. Also, treat every fiber as if it's alive, because if you look at a live fiber with the unprotected eye, you could damage the retina in your eye. So there's a lot of things that you need to do to be safe with fiber, before you even start fusion splicing. Fusion splicing is relatively easy and relatively safe. You basically, the biggest thing is, you have to strip the fiber. You're gonna have to cleave the fiber. So watch what you do with that scrap. Okay. You're going to put it in the fusion splicer. It's going to line the X and the Y axis up, and it's going to fusion splice it. It's going to stress test it. And then when you get done, you're going to pull it out, slide the heat shrink up, put it in a thing. Chuck's ADD is bad tonight. I have a fusion splicer up on the hill in the new podcast studio. It's a FiberFox fusion splicer. I need to break it out and make videos with it. So again, just make sure that you brief this new person on those dangers, but maybe act as a mentor, maybe shadow them, supervise them until they become comfortable doing it, and don't be understand that if they're going to be new, they're going to break it. They're going to do something, not the fusion splicer, but they're going to break the fiber. They're going to do something wrong. That's okay. That's part of the learning process. You know, don't beat them up when they make mistakes, because don't remember this. Remember this. At some point in your career, you were that new guy. You were that guy who's nervous. You were that person who broke fiber. So be kind and be patient. Okay. Um, how many Cat 6 cables can we run through a 2-inch conduit? So that's a great question. I need to know what is the size of the Cat 6. I need to know how many 90-degree bends you're going to have, right? Because all that factors in. All that factors in. As a matter of fact, here's what I'll do. Here's what I'll do for you. I do have a picture of a cable fill chart on my phone. I will make a TikTok video and I will show you that chart. Okay. So it kind of really all depends. You know, how many 90s you have, you know, and does it, because if it's 3, then you got to derate it and a whole bunch of other stuff like that as well. That's a great question. I will make a video for that for you. All right, so moving on. Let me see the next question, and I got 2 more questions. This one's from Marcus. What is the easiest way to make labeling actually useful? How about following the standards? You know, I don't understand. People like labeling by the room numbers. People like labeling sequentially. Why not label by the standards? Because if you label by the standards, that label on the faceplate is going to tell you what closet it goes to, what patch panel it goes to, and what port it lands on. So you'll know where the other side of that cable goes to before you've even walked away from the faceplate. Okay? But I understand. When Chung, the customer, wants to label them this way, if you explain to the customer how their decision is going to cost them more money, quite often that's going to make them change their mind. It truly, truly is, right? Um, Also, you know, when you do labeling, create some kind of a spreadsheet or some kind of a documentation trail for that. There are software programs that you can buy where you can put in the cable type, the cable number, where it goes to, what closet. It costs money. It costs money. It's just not cheap. Not cheap. Okay, next question. This comes from Claire. Are wireless surveys necessary every time, or can I wing it? Well, certainly you can wing it, but you're a professional. You're a professional. You always want at least do what's called a predictive survey, you know, for your non-trivial install. So that way, especially if it's going to be something that's going to be high density or mission critical, right? Because it's better to find the problem before it goes into live production. Now, predictive is going to be fine. It's going to be straightforward, but don't skip the validation part after the install, and document. Because again, if you wing it, if it fails, you're going to be paying for it. See, a lot of people don't realize quality construction, quality installs don't cost money. Well, they cost money. They don't cost more money. It costs more money. Poor quality installs cost more money because now you got to go back to fix it. And instead of going to a new job, well, then you're not making the revenue on the previous job, so you're taking the double hit. So poor quality work costs way more than good quality work does. All right, this next question comes from Derek. Hey, live and learn 4. How you doing? From Derek, how do I hire somebody who will stay and grow with the company? Oh, I love this question. How about treating your employee as their most valuable, as they are your most valuable asset? Pay them a good living wage. Pay attention to their needs. We understand that not every technician is motivated by money. Some are motivated by title. Some are motivated by, just every once in a while, a pat on the back, right? So that's the first step. Make sure that you want to be known as the contractor who that everybody wants to go work for because you treat them the best. That's the first step in retaining key people in your company. Now, now let's talk about some steps you can do when you're doing the actual interviews. Right? Try to screen for attitude and learning potential. You're going to want somebody who's a constant learner. You are interested in the skills that they currently have, but you're also interested in the skills that they want to learn. You're also interested in, the career path they want to go. Ask them, where do you want to be? Do you always want to be a technician, or do you want to become a fiber tech, or do you want to go to become, a project manager or an estimator or a trainer, right? Depending on how they answer, that's going to tell you the caliber of the person that you have. Okay, that's going to be the best thing there. It makes again, I can't say this enough. Pay them a good living wage. Pay them a good living wage. That's a great way to keep and retain good people. So let me go back and look at the comments. That was my last question. Let me see here. I have 2 years in the industry. Should I take my BICSI? Yes, Jorge. I agree. Yes, you should take your BICSI. I mean, I'll show that on live stream. There we go. I just did a TikTok video like yesterday or today about certifications in the industry. When you have your certification, it shows your employer, it shows your customer that you are dedicated to your craft. Now, on the flip side of that, that's going to cost money, that's going to cost time. But on the flip side, there will be some people who will tell you, I'm just as good as a certified BICSI tech. And the answer is they might be. But that certification means you had to go to an independent third party to prove it. And now you have to go back and get your continuing education credit. So I obviously agree with that 100%. Alrighty, I can't read that. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but Unify lets you position and generate heat maps in their controller software, and as do other manufacturers. I'll have to check them out. I will have to check them out. Calorie servers, they become much cheaper, high prices in the fiber certification. Okay, very good. May have new fibers, built-in self-certification tests. Um, so hold on. So you bring up a great point. There's a calibr. There's you can't do a calibration. The factory goes in and there's a factory calibration and there's a field calibration. Those are different. Those are different. A factory calibration, they actually go in and test the internals of the testers. They're different than field calibrations. I just will say that, right? Here, here. Sign them up with GoFar. Absolutely. GoFar has some great training. They're a great sponsor of the channel, and I appreciate them so much, right? Uh, okay. This is going back to my question that I had about how the guy who's afraid of fusion splicing involve alcohol and party games while learning about a fusion splicer. Obviously, he's joking. Obviously, he's joking, right? There you go. So those are all my questions for tonight. Make sure that you send me questions for next week's. So DM me and I'll do that one video for the two um for the cables that go Cat 6 cables going into the 2-inch pipe. I'll make a YouTube video for that as well. So until next time, everybody, remember, knowledge is power.